Taptajivanam Kaviveriditham Kalmashapaham Sharavanamangam Shrimadatatam Bhuvigananti Bhuriyaj. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to squirt souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We're on the chapter with the Devotees at Dakshineswar Part 2, and we're in the middle of Sunday, December 16th, 1883, and we're on page 344. This chapter, it's entitled with the Devotees at Dakshineswar Part 2, but it's really, it could have been titled M's Long Visit. This is part of that one time that M spent several weeks with Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineswar during the kind of Christmas holidays, you could say. So the very, very important period for M especially, and for us because we get all of these teachings. There was a Mr. Mukherjee who showed up last week, and Sri Ramakrishna has been having a conversation with him. We don't know too much about him. He was a relative of Pran Krishna. That was about all that we know. But he's a very fortunate person because he gets some very, very special teachings from Sri Ramakrishna. We don't know what Thakur saw in him, but anyhow, I'll start at the top of the page in the Master. Weep for God with a longing heart. Tears shed for him will wash away the clay. When you have thus freed yourself from impurity, you will be attracted by the magnet. Only then will you attain yoga. Mukherjee, priceless words. Master, if a man is able to weep for God, he will see him. He will go into samadhi. Perfection in yoga is samadhi. A man achieves kumbhaka without any yogic exercise if he but weeps for God. The next stage is samadhi. Yeah, Thakur makes many statements about this. Sometimes he says just 24 hours, sometimes 3 days, if we can weep for God. But it's not such a simple thing. And many people will actually shed tears. And it'll be a little bit of a mixture. They'll be weeping for God, but there'll be something that triggers it. There'll be some internal pain or some family problems or some diagnosis of a disease or some loved one has something that'll be there it'll be a little bit tinged. It won't be a selfish type of thing, but to just purely weep for God is a very rare thing. Almost we can say reserved for these special souls that can do that. Thakur, was there anything that triggered it? Was there anything in his longing for God that we can trace back to any unhappiness in his life or any tragedy or anything like that? It was pure. It's pure longing for God. So this is why it's a very high bar, a very high standard. We all can have times when we feel that some tears will come and everything, and it's a very good sign. Thakur very often would be almost ecstatic when he heard that some of his disciples had wept for God. He thought it was really a tremendous sign and everything. But, I'm reading this Swami Atmajnananda's commentary on the Gospel, and he makes a big point about this, how with most of us, there'll be a little bit of some secondary thing there, that longing for God will be there, but a little bit like the renunciation of the man who lost his job and went to Benares. He got his job back. That was the end of his renunciation. A little bit that if whatever's causing that pain in our hearts, if that gets eliminated, then we'll feel, well, thank you, God, you helped us and everything. But just to long for God is a very rare thing. I can almost not imagine it. We can have a little taste of it, but this very, very special thing. And we know that because Thakur is saying that this is equivalent to reaching that stage just before samadhi. So it's not an ordinary type of just weeping for God. It's got to be something really very high degree of purity and that longing for God. Now he goes right from this weeping for God to perfection in yoga and samadhi. How he combines these two. One, of course, the path of devotion, and then he goes right to the path of yoga. And then he says there's another method, that of meditation. So now he's made this transition from what we can say Raja Yoga to from the Bhakti Yoga to Raja Yoga. There's another method, that of meditation. In the Sahasrara, Shiva manifests himself in a special manner. The aspirant should meditate on him. The body is like a tray. The mind and buddhi are like water. The sun of Satchidananda is reflected in the water. Meditating on the reflected sun, one sees the real sun through the grace of God. Pratibimbavada, this is one of Thakur's favorite illustrations. It's a very interesting illustration for several reasons. One is that it's meant to show that the reflection of the sun in one container doesn't diminish the sun. And there can be any number of containers, and it'll still be the full sun in each one. There's several aspects to this illustration of the sun. Then it shows that this idea of the oneness of the individual, the jiva, each jiva is a reflected sun, that this doesn't rely upon a belief in the oneness of this physical universe with God, because this is a model that easily fits in with the Sankhya doctrine. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna sometimes, when he talks about this idea of reflection, he'll say according to the Puranas. Now, this is code. Thakur has this kind of code where he'll say according to Vedanta or according to the Puranas. According to the Puranas means a dualistic model and devotional. So we can accept, as Sankhya and yoga schools, we can accept that this physical body is real, and his mind, all of these things are real, and still reflecting that one sun of consciousness. So there's an interesting point that there's a doctrine of the relationship between the Jivatman and Paramatman doesn't necessarily rely on or depend upon our understanding of the status of the external universe. This is why in the Shakta school, I remember Swami Swamiji wrote a beautiful book on mother worship, where he states very clearly that the Shaktas, they'll accept this universe as real, manifestation of the divine, but they're also Advaitins, non-dualists, because they also accept the oneness of the individual soul with the Supreme Soul. So that is more of the key thing. So this illustration allows us to accept this Advaitic idea that the individual soul is nothing but a reflection of the real soul, and there's only one Paramatman. And it doesn't involve us saying that the world is the Jagat Mithya, the falseness of the world. Now, we can combine both of them, and generally, when we talk about Advaita Vedanta, because of Shankaracharya mostly, we generally put them together hand in hand. You accept this Brahma Satyam and everything, you also accept, and this Jiva and Paramatma, you generally accept this the Jagat is Mithya. But it's not necessarily true that we have to accept it that way. So Thakur takes this illustration in both senses, that it also indicates that we can accept the reality of this world, and we can also accept the fact that The jiva is just a reflection of the individual self, jivatma, just a reflection of the paramatma. We go to Thakur, he'll give us so many. We'll get a little bit again to this question of unreality of the world. What does it mean to say that this world is mithya? So this is Pratibimbavad. It's a very beautiful way of looking at it. The body is like a tray, the mind would tear like water. The sun of Satchidananda is reflected in this water. So the sun is unaffected. This is part of the whole thing. Sun is unaffected. The sun is undiminished, no matter how many. If we ask ourselves, is there a particular number of jivas? How do we understand? As many containers, there'll be that many reflected suns. And then Thakur, of course, he goes through that whole thing. Then what do we have if we eliminate one container? Then how many suns are there? That big conversation with Girish he has later and everything. And what happens when all of them are gone? How many suns are there? Kumar. How many suns are there?
Girish says one.
Girish says one. Thakur says, no, there's no one to say at that point. Then that's beyond the comprehension of the mind. And he also says here he just says meditating on the reflected sun, but sometimes he says the only way to see the real sun is through the reflection. That means that we have to turn within if we want to have that experience. But the worldly man must constantly live in the company of holy men. It is necessary for all, even for sannyasis. But it is especially necessary for the householder. His disease has become chronic because he has to live constantly in the midst of lust and gold. Mukherjee, yes, sir. This disease has indeed become chronic. This is one of Thakur's favorite expressions also. Legeache. To become chronic, that means that it's not just a temporary thing. It's something, we get a chronic illness. It's very hard to get rid of it. Master, give God the power of attorney. Let him do whatever he wants. Be like a kitten and cry to him with a fervent heart. The mother cat puts the kitten wherever she wants to. The kitten doesn't know anything. It is left sometimes on the bed and sometimes near the hearth. This is a spiritual attitude that Thakur recommends very much. This is one of his favorite illustrations for this idea of perfect sharanagati. That how do we practice that? One way of practicing that is to not make any distinction between getting something that we want and something that we don't want. Not making any distinction between something is God's will and something is our effort. That everything that happens is the will of the mother, and everything that happens is good, is in our best interest. We don't know why, we don't understand, but we don't question it. I've seen people like this. It's not that they're God-realized souls or anything, but this is really their spiritual attitude. That whatever happens, I know it's for my best. The mother is looking after me. And there's a tremendous amount of comfort and a tremendous amount of freedom. Because the mind, with the rest of it, is constantly worried about, is this the best thing for me? Is this what I want? How do I get this? How do I avoid that? We're constantly worried about all of these things. So this is a perfect type of acceptance. It can be done through belief in karma also. That whatever happens, that's my karma. What can I do? Kopal. This was in the cards. This was meant for me. What can I do? So it relieves a tremendous amount of second guessing and regret for things and wondering what could have been. All of these ideas. I remember when I was young, I used to listen to this gospel on the radio station with these preachers, these really some fantastic preachers, and one of them kept saying, "Don't second guess the Lord." That means we think, "Oh, why did God do that for me?" They don't second guess it. If we have that belief, If we have that belief that Mother is looking after us, that whatever happens is not simply by chance, then we'll never say, "Oh Lord, why did you allow that to happen?" Somehow, we don't know why, we don't know how. This is the best thing for me. We look back at all tragedy in life and everything, and we see that yes, that it was a great learning thing, the great turning point in my life. That Swamiji's poem, that Angels Unawares, one of my favorite poems. He talked about that, the blessed misery, blessed superstition, all the things that take place that we think are great tragedies turn out to be blessings, and we can make them blessings. This is uh, a little bit up to us. That if we really have that belief, then we can turn everything into something positive. If we look at it that way, and it'll really be a blessing for us. Yeah.
In the earlier paragraph, when we talk about the holy name, is it God realized soul?
No, when we talk about holy company, of course, God realized soul is holy company, but it's rare.
In this
Yeah.
paragraph.
So uh, sometimes it'll mean sannyasis. Sometimes it'll literally satsang will be sadhu sangha. It can just be any devotee, anybody who's leading a spiritual life, anyone who's on the same path that we're on. It really means just avoiding very worldly people. They can drag the mind down to a lower level.
Because he called us sannyasi separately over here for some reason in the earlier paragraph.
No, what he said, which
For householder and for sannyasi, it is important to have holy company.
yeah. So that means that very often he'll warn, even in our order, they'll warn sannyasis from going out on their own and being alone and not having holy company. And then they'll think they become great souls, and all sorts of problems will come. Or they mix too much with householders and worldly people and everything. Uh, so the sannyasis also need this holy company, because a sannyasi doesn't mean it's necessarily a very highly evolved soul. This is someone who had a great desire to lead a life of renunciation. But it doesn't mean that their minds are still not susceptible to any negative type of company and things like that. There's a sutra we'll get to in the Raja Yoga about the little cracks, chidras. The mind can slip through, and some bad idea can come, some influence and everything. So we also have to have holy company. It's a very good way of understanding that sannyasins are also human beings, and that we also have our desires, and we also have our shortcomings and failures and everything. People, devotees, make a great mistake when they raise up the sannyasins that we can't do anything wrong, we're perfect and everything. There's a great mistake, and then they find out that we're human beings, and they get disappointed and they give us up. Better they know in the beginning that we also need the help of holy, and we benefit so much. I mean, when the senior sadhus come, or even just to be in the company of devotees for us is uplifting. We also get inspired that way. So the sadhus definitely need that. Householders need it because uh, they're more often in the company of people just through their job and other things that they can't avoid it. Sannyasins uh, traditionally were a little bit removed from society, so they didn't have to worry so much about it. But the householder, sometimes through their job and everything, they have no choice. They don't get to choose the company that they keep. Uh, Family members also, they may find themselves in a family situation where no one else has interest in spiritual life. So for them, it's more important because there's so many negative things to overcome. But if a sannyasin thinks that I don't need holy company, that now I'm strong enough on my own and everything, it's a very dangerous position unless they've really achieved something. Yeah, and if they've really achieved something, they'll love holy company. Yeah, there's a great joy for the sadhu. See, we have our visiting sadhu here, Swami Isha Dhyanand. We're so happy to have his company. Uh,
Both way. I am also very
And he's also happy. Yeah. And now we have,
proves again.
yeah. And now we have our Swami Bhaswadananji with us. So, yeah, we feel great joy when we have all of this holy company. Mukherjee. It is good to read sacred books like the Gita. Now he's just been given a very, very high teaching, and now he's kind of bringing things down a little bit, reading books again. This was Thakur had a thing about everyone constantly saying how you have to read books. He didn't read books. He heard a lot of things and everything, but everything was his own experience. So he says, the master, but what will you gain by mere reading? Some have heard of milk, some have seen it, and there are some besides who have drunk it. God can indeed be seen. What is more, one can talk to him. Now, these are things that go beyond mere logic and philosophy and reasoning, and we have no reason to believe any of these things are true, other than the fact that Sri Ramakrishna and a handful of great souls have had that direct experience. This is the pramana for that. Otherwise, where do we find the pramana? And even in the scriptures, we don't find this boldness to say that we can talk to God. And some of devotional literature, of course, will have all of that. But for Sri Ramakrishna, it was such a vivid, tangible, real, concrete experience that it was completely impossible to deny that experience. Even, I mean, occasionally Narendra and Hazara, others, they'd put a doubt in his mind that this is Monirabhul, this is some hallucination. And what would he do? He would ask the Divine Mother. And she would say, no, these are all true. And then he would test if these things are true. He would say, see that rock? Let that rock jump off the ground. And it would happen. It was just his life was different. we can't do that ourselves. Yeah, we read these things. Yeah, once it happened. Yeah, not that he did it all the time. Yeah, one time he said that idea came into his mind. He wanted a sign. That's all. He wanted a sign. Other times, the Divine Mother herself would say, "Yes, my child, everything that you've said is true," and something like that. Yeah. Yet we hear and read that after God realization, all doubts disappear. But Thakur was like a child. Like a child, he would believe almost anybody, whatever the doctors say, what Narendra would say. So they would put a little doubt in his mind, not a real doubt, a little doubt. He would go to the Divine Mother, and she would take care of it. The first stage, this is Sri Ramakrishna, is that of the beginner, Paravartak. This is something we find in one of the one of the sects that they talk about these four different types. He studies and hears. So now he's going back. Yeah, they'll be the ones who will read books. We do so much with books that we can't say that forget about reading books. This is how we develop some concrete idea of what spiritual life is about, and we develop some type of conviction. Jukti, we have to use this our sense of logic and reason to get rid of false ideas and superstitious things. We have to do it. But it won't take us to that final truth. It'll eliminate things. It'll give us some type of conviction. So this is the first stage. It's important in the beginning. He studies and hears. Second is the stage of the struggling, aspiring. The sadhaka, one who's striving for realization. He prays to God, meditates on him, and sings his name and glories. No mention of reading books anymore. Now, we can read books all the way through. It doesn't make any difference. But here, we don't have to rely on them. It depends on the type of individual we are. So take our Swami Turiyanandi. He loved the study of Upanishads and scriptures and things. And in our order, we have many great souls that they'll take great joy in reading the scriptures. So, but it's not necessary. That's the thing. That they understand that there's something higher than that. This direct realization. So this is that second stage. He prays to God, meditates on him, and sings his name in glories. The third stage is that of the perfect soul, siddha. So this is someone who has attained that ultimate goal, that God realization, self-realization. He has seen God, realized him directly and immediately in his inner consciousness. So this means that realizing God within means that we understand that we ourselves, and God dwells within, as are the higher self within. That we may still have a little dualistic attitude. That's fine. We still may believe that now we realize God is the Antaryamin, that God is the indweller, and I'm the servant of God. We can have that type of relationship. Or we can realize this absolute oneness, the jnani, that this ego disappears and nothing is there at all except the Brahman. And I am that. It's not that now that somebody else is there. It's not, otherwise it won't be my realization. I have that realization. So then that realization that I am Brahman means consciousness, self-awareness. That we understand that as the real nature of the self. Now we can understand these three, then we get this fourth. Last is the stage of the supremely perfect, the siddha of the siddha. These will be those rare souls that come again and again. If this nitya siddha is already perfect. So last is the stage of the supremely perfect, like Chaitanya. Such a devotee establishes a definite relationship with God, looking on him as his son or beloved. So we can say that this is the state of vijnana for the devotee, that the devotee will keep that ego of devotion and live in the world with this type of relationship. And it'll be very real. It'll be a real thing. And this is after that experience of perfect oneness. So the difference is that this ego of the vijnani is not a real ego. It's just a mark on water. It doesn't do anything except allow this relationship. It doesn't have any substance to it. It doesn't have any binding power. M, Rakal, Jogin, Latu, and the other devotees were entranced by these words of divine realization. See this Mr. Mukherjee, how fortunate he was. Huh? Mr. Mukherjee and his friend were taking leave of the master. After saluting them, they stood up. The master also stood up to show them courtesy. Mukherjee smiling, that you should stand up or sit down. Master smiling, but what's the harm? The Thakur had such humility and simplicity. When the Brahmas would come to him, they didn't know anything about how to salute a holy man. They maybe would like that. So Thakur would make pranam to them. To Keshav, gradually they learned how to do it. He didn't hesitate. He had no sense of pride that way. So even to stand up, this is something that if somebody's a great holy man, why should they have to do that? But it's just a kind of a courtesy, and it shows that there's tremendous humility that Thakur had. But they recognized it, and they kind of laughed, and of course they were pleased at his simplicity. So that you should stand up or sit down, Master smiling. But what's the harm? Water is water, whether it is placid or in waves. I am like a cast-off leaf in the wind. The wind blows that leaf wherever it lists. I am the machine and God is the operator. Shuska Parnavat. Thakur loved this Ashtavakra Samhita. And every once in a while we'll find that he'll, in the simple Bengali language, he'll give an illustration that we find in that Ashtavakra Samhita. This is one towards the end. We have this, and Thakur turns it into a kind of a whole little story about those who are eating food and banana leaves outside, And afterwards, everything dries up, and the wind comes and it blows it in all different directions. We see this in India, of course, that nobody bothers to clean up because the cows will eat it, and it's all biodegradable stuff, whatever type of leaf plate it is. So once the dal and everything is there, it kind of sticks to the ground, but then it dries up. Yeah? And when the wind comes, it blows it all over. And that means that there's no plan. That wherever karma takes, of course, we don't even have to think of karma. Whatever chance, whoever comes up, whoever needs help, that they don't plan on anything. Shushka Karnavat. Their activity is just like this dried leaf, wherever the wind blows it. So this is the way the God realized soul lives in the world, and the way some sadhus will live as a type of spiritual practice. And we see, not that they're all highly realized souls, but there'll be some sadhus that they won't make any plans. They'll wander from one place to another with no plan. You ask, where's your next place? They won't have a plan. Another sadhu will come and say, I'm going to Puri, come with me. Say, okay. Huh? Anything, or they hear the Bhandara over there, is okay, I'll go there. But no plan, just wherever the wind blows them. So they'll do that as a type of spiritual practice, non-planning. Householders can't do that. But the householder can a little bit practice this a little bit to feel that, yes, I won't try to design things too much, manipulate things too much. Let karma play. That whatever happens, I'll take that as that divine will. And then he says, I am the machine and God is its operator. Now, this is another thing that there's a big difference between taking this as a spiritual attitude and having that realization. And it's not even that realization, because it's not even true that people don't have that realization. It's not true. We can't say it. It's a big hoax and self-deception to think that whatever I do is the will of the Divine Mother. After God realization, we may be able to say that now I see that God is even acting as the thief. That's a different story. But for us to do it, it's just hypocrisy for us to do that. We can recognize that we would like to reach that stage and that state where we really feel that we're an instrument in the hands of God. But it doesn't happen before God realization, and it doesn't happen as long as that ego sense is there and we have our own desires and our own impurities. It doesn't happen before that. So this idea that I'm just an instrument, I am the chariot, and Mother is the charioteer, I do as you make me do, all of that, we have to be very cautious. That if we're going to say that, we have to eliminate every last vestige of self-interest and ego and everything. Yeah, and we can't say that. We can't say that. That's for the God realized soul to say that. There's a big mistake. I mean, we love that song. Everybody sings that song. I wonder what do they think when they sing that song? We sing the most common song. And if anybody knows any Bengali song, they'll know that song. Shokali Tomari Icha. But can we say that? Who can say that when I know that I'm doing things out of my own selfishness and my own desire to fulfill any pleasure that I have, that I don't care about my neighbor or anything like that? How can I say, oh, everything is your will, Mother? It's hypocrisy. Ram Prasad could say it. Yeah. Ram Prasad, Thakur looked upon Ram Prasad really as his ideal. Mother, you revealed yourself to Ram Prasad, why not to me? So there's Ram Prasad, he was also a special soul like that. So we can sing it and we can understand that this is some very high ideal. We can understand Thakur's life, that this was a living truth for him, that he didn't even say any words that weren't Mother's words. But the ego has to be completely effaced or completely purified or completely transformed, ripened, however we understand it, before we can say that. Now, is there a sense in which we can understand everything else? Yes, if we say that this idea of the individual I is false, we analyze. There's no such thing as this individual ego. Then God alone is who else dwells within. That's why very often Thakur will say, people say that, yeah, but this is suffering to us, but who are you? Huh? Analyze, search for the I, you'll find God alone is there. If that's true, God alone is there, then God alone is the doer. These are all true. But as long as we have this feeling of I, then we have to take responsibility for what we do. We have to try to purify it. There's a bit of a paradox in spiritual life. We're trying to purify this I to realize that it has no substance to it. But there's no other way. We have to do it.
Swamiji, depending on karma and karma phala,
Yeah.
that also somewhat like this, that if we don't try to change the effect of
Yeah, we're in that stage. We're somewhere between the Pravartika and the Sadhaka. That we act mostly not according to divine will, but according to our samskaras and our desires and everything. So our job is to try to purify ourselves, purify the heart, and part of it is through the self-analysis. Part of it is just through our spiritual practice, holy company, all of these things. Yeah. So, because the worst religious fanatics will say, God is making me do this. This is the will of God, that I go and kill people and do all sorts of things. And they may have that deep conviction that they're doing God's work and God's will and everything. But we see the fruits of it. We know that it's not such a simple thing. Okay, so now M is going to start wondering about all these things. See, half of these things are being said for M. This is M's real training period here. Mr. Mukherjee and his friend left the room. M thought, according to the Vedanta, all is like a dream. Are all these, the ego, the universe, and the living beings, unreal then? Now, this is such a point of confusion. And I sometimes wonder, when we use this word unreal, what do we mean? And like a dream, swapnavat. What do we mean by that? If we mean literally, like a dream, then we have to really, I close my eyes and nothing exists. I open my eyes and it exists again. There are no physical objects in a dream. There's no perception in a dream. There are no senses in the dream. I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. How do I know anything in a dream? Because I'm dreaming it. Because it's a dream. There's no reality of the other person. I can't say that even these eyes that I'm saying or seeing things are part of the dream. There's no objective reality to anything in a dream. 100% subjective. Now, do we mean that? Swapnavat. Other ways of understanding it. There's a dreamlike quality to this world. When at the end of life, suppose at the end of this life, everything kind of disappears, we find ourselves in a different loka, we'll look back and say, yeah, it was a long dream, just like a long dream. And sometimes like a dream, it means that there's so many irrational things that take place. We wake up from a dream, we say, oh, that's crazy. How could that possibly have happened? Sometimes it feels like that here. I know that there are times when things happen in a dream that seem more real than the waking state, and things happen in the waking state that seem more dreamlike than a dream. Okay? Sometimes, suppose you have a car accident or something. First thing is this: wow, am I dreaming this? Did this really happen? We get that feeling sometimes. So we can easily say that this is like a dream, but to literally say that it's like a dream, which is just a projection. No, there's nothing objective in it. This is a very hard stance to take. There's some who try to do it. This is subjective idealists. They'll try to do it. I don't see how tenable that is. But it can be a spiritual attitude. But if one has that belief, then no chance for any type of relationship with other people or attraction, aversion, nothing. This is a test, and maybe they can do it for that reason, to avoid that type of attachment and everything. Otherwise, it's very good to understand that it's like a dream, that it's just a passing thing, that it will also come to an end. Anitya. This is the other way. Now, in Vedanta, sometimes this word sat and asat, this idea of reality, has to do with whether something is permanent or changing. Now, if we simply want to say that this world is changing, okay, that's an easy thing. If we take it, that's the unreality of the world. If we take it in any deeper sense, though, then we really have to wonder how we can really hold on to that type of position. So Sri Ramakrishna, he never said that this is a false doctrine. He said, I don't like to call the world unreal like a dream, because we know he didn't have any philosophical positions that I believe this, I don't believe that. Everything was a spiritual attitude for him and a path. For some people, if they really want to get rid of attachment and they really want to get rid of desire and they really want to turn deep within, they can look upon this world as a dream, and good. That may be the path that they should follow. For others, just understanding the hollow nature of the world. See, we have these different terms. We have anitya, avastu, and asat. We have these three terms. Asat, we can say that, or somehow really false. Vedanta, we have this idea of the Vyavaharika point of view that it's real but changing. It's not just complete imagination. The Pratibhasika idea, this absolute truth will be beyond everything. But we have this relative reality of the world. So they'll make a distinction between something that is absolutely impossible, that something can't exist. But even a mirage, we're actually seeing something that gives the appearance of the oasis and everything. We're not seeing things exactly the way they are, and we can understand that the universe that we see is dependent upon our senses and so many other things. We can understand all of that, and there's nothing absolutely objectively real to anything. A lot of it is subjective, but to talk about this mityata, this real idea that this non-existent at all. So it's a very difficult thing. If we look at this idea of the ocean and the wave. Now, we can say that there's really no such thing as a wave, because even a microsecond, it doesn't remain. Even a micro nanosecond. It's not even like a table or a chair. We can say this can live 100 years without changing. But a wave, we're fooled into thinking there's a shape of it because of the photograph and because of the paintings. We have a seascape artist, then we'll see the wave. It'll have a certain shape. But if you go look at a wave, I used to do this when I was young. I used to go fishing with my grandfather, and we'd go out on the end of the pier, and I would look at the waves and try to follow a wave, and I would realize that it's just the surface keeps changing. There's really no such thing as a wave, but it's the ocean. It's not my projected in my imagination or anything like that. So this way we can say that name and form are something that don't give any permanent status to anything in the world, but the substance is there. This, of course, is the Advaitic point of view, the Vedantic point of view, that we're just looking at the surface of things. So this is why Thakur will say that the wave is real because the ocean is real, and the substance is water. There's nothing but water in it. But the name and the form constantly changing. So everything is changing. But my theory, this idea of anitya, doesn't apply to the world as much as it applies to us. We're the ones who are constantly changing. That we, not even for a second, of this ego sense and everything is constantly changing. And if everything else in the world is permanent, it's still anitya, because we're the ones that, and will disappear one day from this world also.
Or as parts of the world we have changed.
What's that?
As parts of the world.
Yeah, and we're also part of the world. We're also part of the world. Physically, that way, of course. But I'm talking about our own experiential side, the indweller, the jiva. If we take ourselves to be a jiva, that's what's constantly changing. Of course, this is a bit of a Buddhist idea also, that they won't even talk about a permanent self behind everything. There's just this constant flow. There's pratyaya, one after another, santati and pratyaya, this idea. One thought follows another thought, follows another thought, giving the impression, or this idea of the firebrand gives the appearance. If you have a torch at night and you do it fast in a circle, it'll look like a circle. But there's never any point in time when it's a circle. It's always a point in different places like that, giving the appearance of something permanent. This is a Buddhist concept, but also Gaudapada likes this idea, the whole chapter like that.
And in Raj Yoga, we learn that when we leave the world still continues.
Yeah, this is because that's a realistic system. This is because this is a Sankhya system. But even Vedanta, when we say that this world will disappear, samadhi, this world will disappear, just for us. Now, if someone is a real idealist, subjective idealist, if this dream ends for me, then it's gone for everybody else also. But it's not a tenable point of view, really, if we analyze that way. Yeah. So yeah, we assume that it's not like a dream in that sense, that everything is dependent upon my experience. If I no longer see, I don't see a chair in a dream. I dream a chair, and I dream other people seeing that chair. If I stop dreaming it, then there are no other people to see that chair. So that's not. There may be some who accept that position, but it's really what they call solipsism. It means that we really can't accept the existence of other people that way. So it's not a very tenable position, but it's very good to look upon this world as somehow dreamlike, and it's not our real home, and we can wake up to something that's really substantial. That's a very good thing. Thakur never questions that idea. That's why he always says anitya, anitya, anitya. Whenever this world is unreal, he'll see half the time he doesn't use this word unreal. Half the time it's a wrong translation. It should be non-eternal or transitory or fleeting, something like that. So now M is asking this question to himself. Are all these, the ego, the universe, and the living beings, unreal then? M had studied a little of the Vedanta. He had also read the German philosophers such as Kant and Hegel, whose writings are only a faint echo of the Vedanta. But Sri Ramakrishna did not arrive at his conclusions by reasoning as do ordinary scholars. It was the Divine Mother of the universe who revealed the truth to him. These were the thoughts that passed through M's mind. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he used to know, he could tell what thoughts were passing through M's mind. Other people also. So he'll give the answer eventually. A little later, Sri Ramakrishna and M were conversing on the porch west of the master's room. No one else was there. It was a late winter afternoon, and the sun had not yet gone below the horizon. Oh, here M will actually ask him. M, is the world unreal? Master, why should it be unreal? Huh? See, this is, again, that same idea of point of view, that good to look upon this world as changing and transitory and nothing to hold on to, nothing that will satisfy us and everything, but absolutely unreal. That's a different story. Why should it be unreal? What you are asking is a matter for philosophical discussion. Yeah. So this is the genius of Sri Ramakrishna. He could separate what's simply some philosophical theory from the ultimate truth, which for him was beyond all reasoning and everything, which was just experience, that perfect experience. In the beginning, when a man reasons following the Vedanta method of not this, not this, he realizes that Brahman is not the living beings, not the universe, not the 24 cosmic principles. All these things become like dreams to him. So even those who have that conviction, there's something, this world is like a dream, that's a high state of realization. That can come as a high state of realization. When we say, oh, this world is like a dream, it doesn't mean anything. But those who really understand the reality of the self, and that everything we see is existing only as it appears to the self through the mind. It doesn't mean that there's nothing out there, but it means that it has a kind of a hazy, it is a high state of realization, and even the highest state of realization, the world will disappear, the jnana. But Thakur always says there's something beyond that, the vijnana state. Again, the genius of his worldview. So, in the beginning, when a man reasons following the Vedantic method of not this, not this, he realizes that Brahman is not the living beings, not the universe, all the things we'll say that are true, that he has become this, not the 24 cosmic principles. All these things become like dreams to him. Then comes the affirmation. So this is this anuloma viloma. There's one direction, we go one way, and then we come back. Then comes the affirmation of what has been denied, and he feels that God himself has become the universe and all living beings. Now, again, we have these language problems. What does this mean? That Brahman can't undergo any type of change. So we can say this Saguna Brahman, sometimes Shakti, different ways of understanding all of these things. So that Brahman still remains unchanged, but everything is a projection out of Brahman. This is the really early Upanishadic idea. Suppose you were climbing to the roof by the stairs, and we read this over and over again. How many times he gives this illustration? Suppose you were climbing to the roof by the stairs. As long as you were aware of the roof, you were also aware of the stairs. He who is aware of the high is also aware of the low. But after reaching the roof, you realize that the stairs are made of the same materials, brick, lime, and brick dust, as the roof. Further, I've given the illustration of the bell fruit. Both changeability and unchangeability belong to one and the same reality. This we looked at last time. This is what's normally thought to be the model for Vishishta Dvaita Vedanta, that Brahman is one, but there are internal distinctions, that Brahman is a substance that has qualities, is characterized by the seeds inside the bell fruit, jivas, and the hard exterior, which is jagat. So it's really jiva, jagat, vishishta, this Vishishta Dvaita Vedanta. But there's only one bell fruit, as opposed to Sankhya where there are two. So this will be that distinction. But it's not like a Dvaita Vedanta where there's no internal distinction. That any internal distinction will be just because of name and form. It won't be a real distinction. So the main point for Ramanuja and others like that is that there's a reality to the individuality of the jiva, just as there are many seeds inside the bell fruit. Now, Dvaita Vedanta will argue against that. My point is really not such a major point. For the philosophers, a huge point. The huge thing. Are there many jivas? Is there only one? Is this ekatmavada? It's a big point for them because of liberation. What happens in that state of liberation? But if any individual reaches that state of liberation, that's beyond one and two, then at that state, if everyone attains liberation, is there only one? Are there many that are all free? All the drops of water that fall into the ocean, do we want to say that there was only one? There was no reality to the many drops? It doesn't matter really. I think it's an overblown type of argument that they have between the dualists and the non-dualists. And for us, practically, well, we can accept, we can start out spiritual life with the feeling, and we all have that feeling of individuality. And Sri Ramakrishna will say very clearly, the sense of I doesn't go. We may reason 1,000 times that this jiva is something unreal, that this jiva is nothing but Brahman itself. There's no real jiva, that is just false identification and everything. The next minute it comes back, that idea. He'll talk about that here. So both changeability and unchangeability belong to one and the same reality. So that means Sat and Asat. The unchangeability will be the consciousness. Changeability will be all the external things, everything that belongs to Prakriti, if we want to use Sankhya language. But then he says, the ego cannot be done away with. Now, this is a tremendous paradox, that we search for the ego and we don't find it. There's no reality to it, and yet we can't get rid of it. That means we can't get rid of the feeling of I. We can't. There's no way to get rid of that feeling of I unless we're in samadhi, or we're in deep sleep, or we're engrossed in reading or something like that. Otherwise, the ordinary consciousness, we have this identification. I don't, even God realized soul knows to put food in this mouth and not somebody else's mouth, and sees things through these eyes and not those eyes. Yeah? So it's just kind of a natural thing. And this is why Thakur says that God realized soul lives in the world with a ripe ego. It's still the sense of I that doesn't go. And for ordinary people, this thick ego keeps coming back. That's the problem, or unripe ego. So Thakur says the ego cannot be done away with. As long as I consciousness exists, living beings and the universe must also exist. After realizing God, one sees that it is He Himself who has become the universe and the living beings. So now we're not seeing this universe as just material, self-existent objects or things. We see everything as outgrowth and upheld within that divine consciousness. Brahman is the ground of everything. So after realizing God, one sees that it is He Himself who has become the universe and the living beings. But one cannot realize this by mere reasoning. So this is something that has to be directly experienced. That means entering. See, problem is this mind reasons on one level and experiences things on a higher level. And Thakur is so clear about. He expresses it in terms of Kundalini, but it doesn't have to be. Just we know that the mind can reach a level where it doesn't see things just through the senses, and it doesn't experience things just through ordinary reasoning. It can, there's a very pure type of mind can reach a level where intuitively it understands things, and this is that higher type of realization that we need. Shiva has two states of mind. First, the state of samadhi, when he is transfixed in the great yoga. He is then Atmarama, satisfied in the self. Second, the state where he descends from samadhi and keeps a trace of ego. Then he dances about chanting Rama, Rama. Did the master describe Shiva to hint at his own state of mind? Okay, this isn't the end of the chapter, but this is the end of that conversation. We'll stop here. Then after that, it'll go to evening time. See, Sri Ramakrishna was very practical. He was very practical that what good does it do to go about saying that this ego doesn't exist, this world is unreal, I'm an instrument in the hands of God, when we don't have that experience. And we have to be realistic and understand where we're starting from in spiritual life. And Thakur, he takes us like little children, step by step by step by step. It's really, really very brilliant. And even a brilliant mind like M is a child in spiritual life. He also has to go step by step by step. Okay, so we can stop here. Om Niranjanam Nityamanandarupam Bhaktanuham Bhathurvikraham Ishavataram Parameshamedhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namah. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us.